This story is originally created by the SkyBL channel for entertainment purposes only. Please do not imitate it. The second day back in the demon realm, I was lounging comfortably in the grand palace chamber, a beautiful and alluring demon lady draped over my arms, sipping on a vintage blood wine. I idly pondered when the great celestial demon war would begin. This is exactly the kind of life a being like me was meant to live. But peace didn't last long. The guard burst in a frantic rush. "Your Majesty, something terrible has happened." My eyes sharpened instantly. The guard gasped for air. "Young Master Matthew has entered the demon realm." The wine cup in my hand fell to the ground with a clatter. Just hearing that name made me instinctively want to run away, but I held myself back. I told my subordinates I'd been in seclusion for the past 20 years, keeping secret that I'd wandered out and gotten involved in a complicated emotional entanglement with someone from heaven's realm, their long-standing rival. If that truth came out, my honor as the demon lord would be completely ruined. Watching the guard tossed aside casually by the visitor, I forced myself to stay calm and sat upright on the couch, speaking with a cold tone. Demons and gods have always kept their distance. Now that Lord Matthew has crossed into our realm, are you here to declare war? Matthew stood there in a white robe, his pale face colder than the fabric itself. He glanced briefly in my direction, his gaze settling on the demon woman wrapped loosely in fabric beside me. The demon race rarely bothered with formalities. Threads of metal could double as clothing, and were even handy to detach during fights. The witch was dressed in a rather revealing outfit, but that was considered quite modest by the standards of the demon realm. But after Matthew shot me that look, I suddenly felt like I'd been caught doing something wrong. I let go of the trembling fairy. Leave for now. The vast palace now held only the silent standoff between god and demon. Matthew stepped toward me, his graceful figure drawing nearer, and I could faintly catch the subtle scent of elegance emanating from him. My mouth felt strangely dry. I frowned and said, "Just say what you need to. Why are you standing so close?" But then I saw him pull out a small baby from behind his robe and place it gently into my arms. The child has been crying nonstop. Might be hungry, needs to be fed. I stared down in surprise. The child had been silenced by magic, crying silently with tears and snot running down their face, looking utterly pitiful. But I shot up from my seat in fury. "Matthew, are you even sane? I'm a man. A man. How could I possibly help you take care of a child? If you want to fight, just say so. No need to provoke or insult me. Do you really think I won't start a divine and demonic clash right now and storm the southern heaven gate?" Matthew calmly wiped the saliva off his face, acting this desperate. "It's like you're trying to deny responsibility, isn't it? You gave birth to this child, so who else should be feeding him?" He waved his hand, and a large screen appeared in the air, quickly showing moments from our intertwined life over the past 20 years. "Shall I refresh your memory about how this child came to be?" I flushed with embarrassment as I brought the child closer. "No need for that, really. I truly don't understand. Why did Matthew descend to Earth to experience emotional trials? Yet it's me who ends up suffering." Matthew was the greatest warrior in heaven, yet he was born with a cold heart and detached nature. The divine emperor sought to balance Matthew's nature by cultivating compassion and a deep care for all living beings. Thus, he ordered Matthew to be reborn in the mortal world to experience human emotions and desires. However, the demon clan has been watching closely from the shadows, occasionally causing trouble, so heaven could not afford to let the warrior remain outside too long. So when Henry was crafting Matthew's fate, he gave him a charm that made him naturally beloved by all, regardless of gender or age. With one lifetime spent in relationships equivalent to 10 ordinary lives, Matthew could quickly grasp the depth of love and loss. Unfortunately, when I descended into the mortal realm intending to eliminate him, my timing went awry, and I ended up being reborn as his childhood friend. That made me the one fated to be entangled with Matthew for the longest time, the unlucky soul bound to him by destiny. They grew up together from a young age, and though both were boys, they secretly developed feelings for each other, unaware of what it meant but still promising their hearts to one another. I was bound by fate to love him completely, with no room for doubt. I stayed by Matthew's side through more than 10 years of study, selling off everything we had to raise funds for his journey to the capital for the imperial exams. I took on all the burdens without complaint, sleeping outdoors in all weather and taking care of every detail of his daily life. But soon, a series of romantic entanglements began to follow Matthew, with beautiful women appearing at every turn. He'd just buy a steamed bun, and the shopkeeper's wife would flirt with him playfully. Whenever he stopped at an inn for food or rest, the innkeeper's daughter would try to run away with him. When he stood up to a bully harassing a woman, saving her in heroic fashion, not only did she want to dedicate herself to him, but the bully himself also tried to force him into marriage. And if they passed by a mountain village, things got even worse. Rival gangs from miles around fought fiercely over him, leading to serious injuries and heavy losses. The nearby officials thought the imperial forces had arrived to crush the bandits and happily brought villagers to thank their hero. That day, I didn't dare let Matthew step outside the room. As soon as he showed up, it was safe to say half the young men and women there would have fallen for him instantly. My jealousy is already overflowing. I simply can't fit in any more brothers or sisters right now. But this was far from over. Matthew passed the imperial exams with top honors and became the youngest scholar ever to win the title of Tanhualang. On the day of the victory parade, the young man wore a crimson robe and had golden flowers pinned in his hair. His face was as fair as jade, his figure slender and graceful like a bamboo stalk. The midday sun shone on his face, and his deep, luminous eyes sparkled like polished glass. As he rode past, he suddenly turned to look back. A small smile from him sent my heart racing. The princess, who had come out of the palace in plain clothes, felt her own heartbeat quicken for a moment. The next day, an imperial decree arrived, summoning Matthew to become the royal consort. At this point, my role as his childhood friend should have come to an end. I just cry a little, curse him for being unfaithful, ask for some travel money as compensation, and then quietly return home on my own. Who do you think I am? The one who defeated the entire demon clan and claimed the throne of the Supreme Lord. How could I possibly give up so easily? Even if I were just an ordinary person, I'd still make something truly extraordinary happen. I found a secret remedy and took it, then cried and clung to Matthew tightly. I appealed to our bond and poured out my heartfelt emotions. The remedy worked surprisingly well, but human affairs can be so unreasonable. I thought skipping the ticket and boarding later was already shameful enough, but the princess turned out even more forceful. She took young Master Matthew to her own residence by force and stationed soldiers to keep me locked away. The day I was in great difficulty. A grand royal wedding was being held in the capital city. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. What did coming down to earth even bring me this time? I've spent 20 years digging up wild vegetables, and then I got betrayed and stabbed. I glared at Matthew. How did this child come about? Do you even have the nerve to ask, as if it had nothing to do with you? Do you really think I could have done all of this alone? I raised my hand and summoned a mirror in midair. Matthew tried to use my past actions in the mortal world against me, but I immediately showed him exactly what happened over those 3 days. Who could possibly be more shameless than us? That's the real question. Matthew's face turned visibly red. His jaw clenched as he said, "Enough." I gave a sharp huff and pulled back. The little one in my arms stopped crying, sucking on my finger while big eyes darted between me and Matthew. Matthew gently brushed his palm across the child's eyes, putting him into a calm state. "Keep your words for later. Don't speak like that in front of the child." I scoffed, my voice laced with disdain. "Hypocrites. You gods are all too good at pretending to be pure." Matthew didn't respond, then gently used his abilities to soothe the wound on my finger. "Earlier, Alexander was really upset, and I thought he might be your child. That's why I came to ask for your help. If I had known it would cause you harm, I wouldn't have come." I glanced at him sideways. "Cut the nonsense. I'm not buying it. Not remembering anything from my time among mortals is one thing, but now that gods and demons are at odds, what's this attempt at closeness?" I handed the child back to him. "Anything else? If not, just leave. Don't even think about using our son to turn me. Our demon clan doesn't care for family ties." Matthew's expression flickered several times, as if he wanted to push back, but he held himself in check. Matthew handed me a jade vial, his expression serious. An herbal remedy to restore your energy. Let me help you recover. I froze for a moment, my face warming as I sharply pushed it away. What injury? I'm perfectly fine. Matthew glanced at me briefly, then moved with swift precision, pressing his palm against the wound on my abdomen. I instantly bit down hard on my lip to suppress a cry of pain. That was the injury Alexander sustained at birth. If you go against fate, there's always a price to pay. I never expected humans to be so fragile. It was essentially a life for a life back then. The severe blow penetrated deep, affecting even my core essence. Matthew ran his hand over the scar, paused briefly, then spoke quietly. Regardless, this time I was at fault with you. I said nothing, having been entangled in the mortal realm for decades. Yet to divine beings, it was but a fleeting moment. In millennia past, the high deity and the demon lord only met on the battlefield. Being so close and treating wounds face to face made me feel uneasy. But Matthew feared I'd flee, so he held my vital point with one hand while channeling divine energy with the other. I had no choice but to sit still and focus on regaining my strength, making small talk to ease the awkwardness. I've checked your reincarnation record. After becoming a royal consort, you still had decades left in your life. Why did you return so soon? Matthew spoke leisurely. The length of one's fate doesn't matter. Enlightenment is all that counts. I teased him. So, was the princess a real firebrand? Did she make you lose interest in worldly life right after marriage? No. The fierce and intense power of the war god, once wild and untamed, was now gently shaped into a steady stream, flowing through warm hands onto my body. The wound slowly closed as Matthew spoke in a calm voice. I once met someone who showed me what true care truly means. After that, he passed away, and I lost this ability as well. Others among ordinary people couldn't teach me anything meaningful. No point wasting time on them. I kept quiet and didn't say a word. After some time, the healing was complete, yet Matthew didn't pull his hand back. I glanced at the child's round, peaceful face as he slept and asked, "Has he been named yet?" "Yeah, his name is Alexander," I said coldly to him. "It's getting late. I won't see you off." Matthew grabbed my wrist. When I came down to the mortal world, I didn't erase my memories. I remember every single day with you clearly. Every promise we made still stands. Matthew's palm had a light layer of calluses, brushing against my skin with a faint itch that wasn't unpleasant. I looked up at him and met his eyes, bright and clear like polished glass. Suddenly, I remembered the day we confessed our feelings to each other in the human world. He had looked at me just like this. He placed a pair of wooden figurines into my hands while eating from his bowl of wontons, his expression as calm and ordinary as any other morning. "William, just living like this forever would be nice, wouldn't it?" The early spring breeze was sharp and cold, carrying a faint hint of peach blossoms. I played with the wooden figurines in my hands, instantly recognizing the quiet challenge in his eyes. "You, young Master William, are the most handsome boy around these parts. This little carving for a lifetime? You're getting a real deal." Matthew smiled and gently took hold of my wrist. "Then add in my whole life. Wherever you go, I'll follow. Does that make it enough?" In the mortal world, William proudly pulled Matthew's hand back and tapped his own lips in reply. But at that moment, Matthew tried the same trick again, and I slowly pried his fingers apart one by one. "What does your childhood promise have to do with me, the demon lord?" Matthew pressed his lips together. "You clearly still have memories from your time in the mortal world. You recognized me and even agreed to it. Why are you denying it now?" I let out a cold, dismissive smile. "It was just pretend play. Why are you taking it so seriously? If I'd known you hadn't erased your memories, I wouldn't have bothered lying in the first place." Matthew clenched his fists tightly. "I don't mind if you keep lying to me," I sighed. "Friends, gods and demons can't coexist. The two sides are on the verge of conflict. Can you pick a side already?" Matthew stood up and moved closer to me. "Are you really a demon?" he sneered. "You carved your way through the blood, 1,000 years ago, and took the throne as demon lord. Yet even now, not a single one among the demon clan knows your true name. How can you claim to be part of their kind if you won't even speak your own name?" I held his gaze with a cold stare. then let out a soft smile after a long silence. But I don't have a single drop of divine power. Just this dark aura forged from enduring the blood sea all these years. I shrugged at him. If I'm not a demon, then what exactly am I? Matthew stared at me quietly. Are you really willing to start a war between gods and demons? You know better than anyone what could happen if those creatures trapped deep in the blood sea are set free. Though gods and demons often clash, there's only ever been one true conflict that can be called a war between gods and demons. 10,000 years ago, during the chaotic era, ancient beings born alongside heaven and earth fought fiercely, and nearly all primordial deities were destroyed, their divine essence turned into the sun, moon, stars, nourishing immortal mountains and the mortal realm. The demon faction was nearly wiped out, with only scattered remnants sinking into the blood sea of the demon realm, sealed away deep beneath layers of powerful enchantments. But sleeping is not the same as being gone. As the last of the primordial gods exhausted their divine power and faded from existence, the seal over the blood sea grew thinner, showing clear signs of weakening. Now, the divine Lord who governs heaven is constantly searching for a chance to strengthen the seal, yet still hasn't found the exact location of the blood sea. If those ancient demon beings are awakened, even an emperor who has inherited divine essence may not stand a chance. Unless the primordial gods return to life, it will inevitably lead to a catastrophe that could shake the very foundations of existence. Matthew's expression grew solemn as he tried to appeal to my sense of right and wrong. I know what you truly desire, and I understand who your real enemy is. Are you truly willing to abandon the world's people for your own personal reasons? He lowered his voice. Aren't they the ones you once risked everything to protect? My hands were clasped behind my back, and a faint wooden hue appeared on my palms from nervous tension. I clenched my hand tightly, gently running my fingertip over the carved features of the small wooden figure before tossing it into Matthew's arms. The early spring breeze felt like it had passed through time, brushing lightly across my face once more. After a long pause, I curved my lips slightly. Next time we meet on the battlefield, if you stand in my way, I'll have to stop you. Matthew caught the small wooden figure that looked just like him, his lips trembling. He whispered, "All right." Matthew left in a daze. Once as serene and clear as the breeze and moonlight, his silhouette now lonely like a kite drifting far away. I couldn't help calling out to him, "Hey!" He turned back, eyes red with hope that I might pull the string. I raised my chin and pointed toward the little child sprawled across the bed. "Take your son with you. This isn't a nursery, and kids aren't meant to be left lying around." Matthew looked so frustrated it was as if he could barely breathe. He let out a bitter chuckle. "Everyone says I'm cold-hearted and unfeeling. But compared to you, I admit defeat." He picked up Alexander and walked away with firm determination. I watched his back retreating and squeezed the other wooden figurine hidden in my sleeve. Many, many years ago, those in the human realm who had great merit could ascend to the heavenly realm to fill vacant divine positions. These were known as later-born divine lords. Among the first to ascend were a king, a scholar official, and a warrior. Back then, I loved teaching others, so I took all three as my disciples and guided them in their cultivation. The other two were afraid of me and studied with great respect, but the warrior was young and impulsive, refusing to accept authority. I made him submit, broke his sword, and greatly tempered his fiery spirit. You only know how to push forward without knowing when to hold back. This will never lead to true mastery. From now on, practice every day. Use a long spear to carve a rose onto peach pits. Thousands of years later, the caretaker from the peach garden came to complain to me, "Keep an eye on your student. He ruined the last batch of ripe peaches, and now he's causing trouble again just as this batch is beginning to bloom." I hurried over and found Matthew standing proudly beneath a peach tree, holding his sword. The entire garden was filled with delicate pink petals, each carved into a human face, gentle eyes lowered, expressions ranging from mild scolding to quiet laughter. Each one mirrored my own features. I ended up laughing out of exasperation. Fine, this is my fault. You've mastered your swordplay. You're ready to leave. Go on, get out already." Matthew looked at me, his eyes carrying a hint of anticipation. "Isn't it nice?" I started to walk away. "The carving is well done. Just don't do anything like this again." He caught up with me and held a blooming peach blossom out in front of my eyes. You don't like it? I let out a soft sigh. This peach grove blooms only once every 3,000 years, and the spirit fruit it bears helps cultivate the late-stage divine Lord's cultivation. It's incredibly rare. Matthew lowered his head. I'm sorry. I messed up again. He had risen through his achievements, proud and firm in spirit, yet often scolded by me as if he were just a child. I felt a pang of guilt, so I pressed the peach blossom into my shoulder and infused it with divine energy into my flesh. I'll take it. Thank you for the flower. He looked up at me, and I gently brushed a fallen leaf from his shoulder. If you ever want to give me something in the future, just carve a simple piece of wood. Matthew nodded in agreement. So much happened afterward that I had completely forgotten those words. It wasn't until our reunion in the mortal world that I received a pair of wooden figurines. One was him and one was me. That's when I realized I had been searching for him all along. And he recognized me too. We both pretended not to know what we clearly understood. The doors of the demon palace swayed slightly, and Mistress Sophia peeked in from the doorway. She was once just an unremarkable doddering vine. When I fell into the demon realm, a few drops of my blood touched her petals, giving her awareness and a quiet connection to me. Sophia slipped in quietly and whispered, "Master, is that little child really yours?" I put away the wooden figures, my expression calm. I had no choice when I came down to the mortal realm, though I never expected Henry, that rascal, to come up with such a story. Sophia speculated, he must have read too many old tales. There are even wilder stories in human forbidden books. I glanced at her. How do you know that? Sophia grinned mischievously and changed the subject. Your Highness, the elders are here to see you. I placed the mask over my face. Let them in. Most of the original demons are gone. Some destroyed, others sealed. Now, what remains of the demon clan mostly formed from the world's lingering resentment and sins. They never hid their greed or cruelty, confronting me directly. Just now, the divine envoy entered the demon palace alone, clearly breaking the rules, yet your highness allowed them to come and go freely. May we ask why? The time for a major conflict hasn't arrived, and there's no need to kill right now. The lead elder stepped forward, closing in with a faint trace of ancient demon blood flowing through him as he projected his authority. After being in seclusion for so long, is the master truly training, or secretly working with the divine clan? I lounged on a bone chair with one leg propped up, wearing a faint, unreadable expression. Are you questioning the master's authority? The elder's gaze turned cold and hostile as he extended his withered, sharp fingers toward me. You don't even dare show your true face. Just who are you, really? I remained still, letting him shatter the mask without a move. At the moment he saw my face, the elder's eyes widened in shock. It's you! The last one. The reason a secret remains hidden is because every single person who knew the truth. With one hand, I brushed gently above his head and whispered, has met their end. The most respected warrior of the demon clan fell instantly under my hand. The mask fragments reassembled in my hand. I didn't put it back on, but no one dared look up at me again. Any objections from the elders? The entire hall fell to their knees in submission. We pledge our loyalty to you, Master. As soon as they hurriedly retreated, silence lasted no more than a few minutes before the palace doors were thrown open again in haste. Are you trying to provoke me? A loud baby's cry echoed, and Matthew walked in with a blank expression, his pristine robe dripping wet. Your son soaked my clothes. Those two seemed to have decided to stick with me now. I took a deep gulp of cold tea to calm myself, watching Matthew calmly change the baby's diaper and then remove his own robe to scrub it clean. After being a divine lord for thousands of years, you can't even handle the most basic purification ritual? I grabbed the front of his collar. What are you deliberately stalling for? Matthew calmly admitted, I ran away to avoid my wedding. My fate hasn't been fully fulfilled yet, so I can't return to heaven to report. So what? Matthew gently pushed my hand away and settled down in bed with the child, calm and composed. Please take responsibility as the demon lord. I've been a god and I've been a demon, but I've never felt this awkward before. I frowned, saying, didn't I tell you before that the next time we meet, I'd deal with you? You said it was only on the battlefield if I got in your way. Then you would act. Matthew shifted inward and patted the empty space beside him. I'm not blocking you. Come lie down and rest. I couldn't make sense of it, but after 1,000 years apart, how had he changed so much? Where was my bold and fearless warrior disciple? And where was my artistic boy who loved carving and intricate designs? This troublemaker in front of me seems to care about nothing but sleep. Alexander made soft sounds and reached out toward me, so I walked over and leaned against the bedhead to play with him. The child crawled over Matthew's arm and snuggled into my embrace. Wiggling around until my clothes loosened, the fabric slipped aside, revealing a peach blossom-shaped mark on my shoulder. And Matthew's gaze grew darker for a moment. I watched him carefully and said, "What are you thinking?" No thinking aloud. Matthew gave a faint smile and pulled me close by the waist. Why shouldn't I? My emotional trials aren't over yet. I'm allowed to think. I stared at him in disbelief and said, "You're going against everything a teacher stands for." Matthew shrugged carelessly. So what if I do, Master? He pulled the playful Alexander aside and squeezed himself into my arms, whispering softly, "Master, Master." I was wrong. I shouldn't have shown him those 3 days and nights in the mortal world. When it came to boldness, I didn't stand a chance against him. I placed my hand on his shoulder and gently pushed him back, then asked in a serious tone, "What's really going on with Alexander?" Matthew let out a low laugh, surprised as Henry, disguised in the role. The merchant was actually Henry in disguise. My mind cleared up a bit. He deliberately used your name in the ledger to lure you into the trap. Good, good, good. One wrote a dramatic story about our master, and the other played it to perfection. I really must have picked up 2 excellent students. Matthew gently placed his hand over my eyes and leaned in close, whispering softly by my ear, "Only I and he know where you are, and no one else has been told." For several days in a row, I was constantly caught up with this father and son pair. I was about to lose control. Just then, an unexpected visitor arrived in the demon realm, and I hurried over to greet them. Shameless demon. So you're the one who took Matthew away. A white-robed goddess stood with fierce brows, pointing at me and shouting angrily. I weakly waved my hand. He's still asleep on my bed. Just take him away. I truly just wanted to get rid of this clingy guy, but to others, it sounded like I was bragging outright. The goddess raised her hand and launched a strike. Lowly demon. How dare you provoke me? I dodged to the side and said, "Wow, so fierce. Aren't you the human princess who always takes what she wants?" The goddess sneered, her voice sharp with pride. "I am the daughter of the heavenly emperor. Today we've crossed paths in enmity. Tomorrow, heavenly forces will lay waste to the demon realm." My interest piqued. "How old are you this year?" The goddess frowned. 3,000 years. I tapped my fingers as I calculated. Robert sure moves fast. Just married and already has a child. Hey, how many wives did he take? Which one of them bore you? The goddess had never heard such words before, her eyes blazing with fury as she launched a relentless assault toward me. How dare you? What kind of person are you to speak your father's name so boldly? I dodged left and right, while the palace chamber was shattered by bursts of divine power. Back when I ruled supreme, your father was still just a child playing with mud. The goddess shouted in anger. Nonsense! My father is a disciple of the ancient deity, the last of the primordial gods who passed down his divine essence to him. His status is unmatched. What are you even supposed to be? As a palm strike rushed toward my face, I didn't dodge or react. I simply leaned back gently. Matthew arrived from the inner chamber and quickly caught me in his arms, glaring at the goddess. Grace, stop! The goddess stared at him in silence, tears welling up in her eyes. Young Master Matthew, are you truly under the influence of the demon clan? Matthew waved his hand, using magic to restore the ruined palace to its former state. I know exactly what I'm doing. Tears welled up in Grace's eyes as she said, I'll report this to my father. Do whatever you want. Clinging to Matthew's chest, I whined, the princess is such a drama queen. She even wrote Henry into a romantic pairing with her. If I've offended her, the emperor won't let me off easily. I'm so scared. Will my older divine brother protect me? Matthew held back a smile. Yes, I will protect you. Grace was so furious she could barely keep her composure, glaring at me with clenched teeth before turning away in clear annoyance. I straightened up, regaining my usual calm, and glanced sideways at Matthew. By rank, Grace should call you uncle. By age, you're vastly older than her by thousands of years. You're the one making a young woman worry over you. Doesn't that make you the old bull eating fresh grass? Matthew protested. I never did anything to provoke her. He waved, and Alexander came over. Matthew lifted his son into his arms, tilting his head toward me. Truth is, I'm the one being nibbled on. I flashed a wide, exaggerated grin. My expression twisted in mock offense. Thinking I'm too old? Matthew laughed. I wouldn't dare. Alexander looked at me with wide, curious eyes. Father, how old are you? I gently pinched his little cheek. Your father here is as old as the heavens and earth. Alexander grew strong on my life force, and within just a few days, his body had reached the size of an ordinary 5-year-old child. His features had fully formed, nearly identical to mine. I stared at him for a long moment before speaking to Matthew. I thought you were Robert's most loyal companion. Long ago the gods fell, and their divine energy nourished the mortal world, leading to the rise of new deities. Robert and Matthew were the first to stand by my side. In life, one was an earthly emperor, the other a loyal and noble general. They were rulers and subjects in their time on earth, brothers in heaven. Robert faced danger several times, and Matthew always came to his aid, especially during the 3,000 years I was cut off from the heavens. Matthew protected him without hesitation or regard for cost. That is why I fell from the sky and hid in the blood sea, afraid to reach out to anyone, because the one I trusted most had tried to end my life, while the other followed him blindly. But as Alexander grew older, the familiar power within him began to surface. I suddenly realized that things weren't as I thought. There was never truly no one behind me. You're mistaken. Matthew shook his head. I wasn't protecting Robert. I was guarding what he took from you. Your divine essence. I looked up in surprise. You know all this? Matthew spoke quietly. You were focused on reinforcing the Blood Sea's seal and planning Robert's wedding. Every time I came to see you, you had no time for me. I hesitated. The southern demons caused chaos. Weren't you fighting down there? Matthew's gaze grew shadowed, a flicker of pain crossing his face. There were no major demons in the South Sea. Robert deliberately sent me away. When I returned, I found you exhausted from sustaining the seal, and Robert took advantage to dismantle your divine essence and claim it for himself. He lowered his gaze, looking at the child in his arms. Robert acted with extreme severity. Your divine essence shattered into countless glowing sparks, which he absorbed. I managed to catch just one fragment. That's Alexander. Without your divine essence, you would no longer be a being of godhood. I destroyed my own body and turned to ash, hiding within the Blood Sea. The barrier once formed by my power became my sanctuary. It took me 2,000 years before I could finally reassemble myself. The fragmented divine essence, having been separated from its core for too long, would slowly fade away. It was Matthew who continuously nurtured it with his life force, waiting patiently until I reappeared, before finally returning it to me. Alexander is a part of me. It is also bound to Matthew's fate. Matthew suggested, there are ways other than war to reclaim the divine essence. I could secretly take Robert and bring him to the demon realm. I gave a quiet smile. He is the Emperor Sovereign. If you harm him, you'll be breaking from the heavenly path. There will be no place for you in heaven ever again. I don't care. Matthew's expression remained calm, as peaceful as an ordinary morning in the mortal world. He told me, wherever you go from now on, I'll follow. I knew he was capable of doing it. I let out a soft sigh. The heavenly clan has been searching for the location of the Blood Sea, hasn't it? Come with me. The heavens and earth were separated, with the upper realm pure and bright, the lower realm dark and heavy. Yet yin and yang are endless. Eventually, they will blend into chaos once more. I led Matthew through the sky until we reached the boundary between heaven and earth, then leapt straight into the vast emptiness beyond, falling endlessly. Darkness swallowed the light, and the fall seemed endless. At the moment of deepest despair, we reached the underworld's abyss. the blood-soaked chasm. The black pool beneath our feet was like quicksand. Every step was dragged down by dark, heavy air, while fierce winds cut across our faces, and the haunting cries of ancient creatures echoed through our ears. Matthew's composed expression cracked slightly, his eyes wide with shock. Didn't the ancient battle between gods and demons end in a draw? Then why did the ancient gods vanish completely, while so many monsters still survive? I shook off the dark mist clinging to my feet. Gods and demons fell, but humanity rose. Accumulate good deeds to rise in power. Let sorrow fill the void of dark paths. People are full of emotions and desires. 7 passions, 6 cravings, 8 sufferings, 9 trials. It's easy to be greedy, angry, or lost in confusion. How many truly achieve inner peace? I led Matthew forward slowly, the seal I had once cast with divine power now as thin as paper. The core point of the spell was wrapped by the great demon's tendril, trembling on the verge of collapse. It wasn't because I sought to reclaim my divine essence that I started the war between gods and demons. Instead, the seal was about to break. I had no choice but to retrieve my divine essence if I were to stand a chance in this battle. Matthew remained silent for a long time before finally asking, "You've been stationed in the demon realm for 1,000 years. If not to prevent the destruction of the mortal world, would you have stayed hidden forever and never become divine again?" I turned back with my hands clasped behind my back. Whether born of divine origin or earned through cultivation, all gods and celestial rulers serve one purpose: to maintain balance across the 6 realms and preserve peace. Robert carries the merit of a true emperor. He's better suited to rule the heavenly realm than I am. I never intended any harm toward him. Matthew looked frustrated, but I let out a sigh. He's been weighed down by inner doubts, unable to fully unite with the divine essence. So he can't wield the sky-annihilating blade. This challenge is beyond him. A wave of blood-soaked wind swept over me, and I paused, slowly speaking the rest. I can't break through it either now. Long ago, all the gods were gone, leaving only me to survive. It takes 1,000 years of build-up just to form one spell array, 7 arrays combined, and then I must place myself at the core, sacrificing my life. Only by returning my spirit to the 9 realms can I draw on the power of heaven and earth to cleanse the blood-soaked sea. But I've long lost my divine essence, stitched together from dark energy instead. I'm no longer a deity, and I don't have the right to sacrifice myself. I looked at Matthew and asked, "Will you help me?" He nodded without hesitation. "Yes, even if it means you might die, death doesn't matter." The seals broke apart, ancient creatures emerged, the world tilted, and the blood sea rose to the surface. This day came earlier than I expected. Ancient horrors thrashed in the crimson waters, stirring up massive dark clouds. Their tentacles and fangs seized all living things without distinction and dragged them into their mouths. The 6 realms seemed to plunge back into chaos, with human cries and monster roars blending together, turning every place into a living nightmare. I stood atop the waves, watching the divine beings simultaneously erect a protective barrier for mortals while working together to contain the blood-red sea, looking utterly exhausted. Hasn't been this lively in ages. I waved my hand, sending a few elder demons flying to block the monster's wide mouth. Settle down for a bit. I can't even hear what's being said below. The goddess in the white dress, now stained with dark fluid, looked up and recognized my face before shouting angrily, "You shameless one! Stealing my beloved, insulting my father, and now you've broken the seal to unleash this monster. I should have killed you back then." I couldn't help but laugh. "Child, where on earth did you get such confidence?" I looked toward the emperor, who held a sacred sword with a serious expression, and landed in front of him. "Robert, your daughter sure knows how to make an entrance." The sword in Robert's hands hummed faintly, as if straining to break free. "This blade is called Flame. It was my core magical artifact long ago." I lightly raised my hand, and it swiftly flew into my palm. At the same time, all the most senior divine generals accompanying the emperor were present, many of whom had seen my true form before and instinctively fell to their knees in shock. "Hail, William, true deity!" Grace, muttering under her breath as she rushed over, froze in place. She was born after I had left the celestial realm. but she must have heard my name spoken before. William, the mentor of the Emperor Lord and the last of the primordial deities. This can't be possible. Grace's face went blank for a moment, then she spoke with resolve. My ancestor passed away long ago. He's clearly a demon, skilled at manipulating minds. Matthew, the high god, was fooled by him. The deity mentioned followed behind me, his sword gleaming with sharp intent as it pointed directly at the emperor. Stung by the words, Grace shouted, "Father! Kill this demon and rescue Matthew." The flaming sword, fiercely loyal to its master, surged with murderous intent the instant she spoke. Within a heartbeat, it was about to charge toward the goddess. Robert waved his hand, pulling his daughter behind him, and sternly said, "How dare you?" Grace stared at the emperor, her heart filled with unease. She wondered about a question that left all the attending gods uncertain. If William had not truly perished, then where did her father's divine power come from? Was it not passed down? Could it have been taken instead, just like how he claimed the throne in mortal lands long ago? Some matters are better discussed privately. I raised my hand, the flames responding to my essence, their blades still holding traces of my ancient divine energy. I raised my sword and traced the formation, reactivating the 7-layer seal on the blood sea. A gentle glow ascended, forming a thin barrier that once again enclosed the monstrous beings. Matthew also erected a protective barrier, enclosing the heavenly deities within it. The vast expanse of heaven and earth was now left with only the three of us. Myself, my disciple, and Robert. Despite the chaos unfolding just moments ago, Robert had remained silent, preserving his sovereign dignity throughout. Now finally relaxed, he let out a weary sigh and called me softly, "Master." Matthew held his sword across Robert's throat. "Silence. You don't deserve that title." I placed a hand on Matthew's shoulder, signaling him to step back. Matthew reluctantly put away his sword and crossed his arms, watching from the side. I gave him a light kick. "Step back. I need to have a quiet word with Robert." Matthew wore an expression of disbelief, as if shocked that I'd be talking privately with another man right in front of him and not letting him hear. It made me want to do it again, so I gave him another light slap. "Good boy, just listen for once." Matthew shot a glare at the elder master, huffed in frustration, then walked off, even using the hilt of his sword to cover his ears. I turned back toward Robert and said with a soft tone, "He's always like this. Really deserves it." Robert looked after Matthew's retreating figure before finally turning his gaze back. "Master has never treated me like that before." I nodded. "You're my most reliable student, so of course I wouldn't reprimand you." "No." He shook his head. "You've never truly been close to me." Robert looked into my eyes, speaking with a gentle but firm tone. "No matter how I perform or what achievements I make, you always take them for granted and never give me a second glance." Meanwhile, Matthew caused trouble constantly in his early days. Reckless and impulsive. But you were always patient and guided him with care. Why is that? "Master, you have 3 students. Why do you only focus your attention on Matthew?" The more I heard it, the more uneasy it felt. I've never been human before, so I don't fully understand their thoughts before becoming deities. "Robert, are you competing for attention?" Robert remained calm and composed, showing no sign of discomfort. "Can't I have my share?" His straightforwardness made me feel a little embarrassed. I only have 3 disciples, yet I still failed to keep things balanced. I've fallen short as their teacher. Henry is laid back, Matthew is quick-tempered. Though they've ascended to divine lords, they still need refinement through experience. But you, Robert, are my most reliable disciple. You've ruled as a human emperor for many years. Kind-hearted and compassionate, always thinking of your people. You don't need my guidance to become a worthy divine lord. Robert remained silent. I let out a soft sigh. During my time on Earth, I once heard the saying, "The child who cries gets fed." I imagine Robert thought much the same. "You said I never notice what you do." That's not true. You're perceptive and have always been by my side. When my divine power was nearly gone 3,000 years ago, you must have sensed that I was close to falling. Robert's gaze flickered slightly. "At that time, you were the one I trusted most, which is why I dared to show you my most vulnerable side. When I'm gone, I'll leave control of heaven in your hands. I have no worries about it. I paused for a moment, speaking slowly. But you still let me down. You ultimately brought the same power struggles from the mortal world into heaven. Robert lowered his gaze. I slightly reddened, and after a long silence, gave a faint, barely noticeable smile. When I was still mortal, I never had any intention of rebellion. It was my older brother who planned to overthrow the throne, so I led troops to support the emperor, only to be misunderstood and distrusted by our father. I respected and cared for him deeply, yet even until his last breath, he believed I was after the throne. Now in heaven, I still respect and care for you. Even if I'm misunderstood once more, I wouldn't regret it. He turned toward the roaring crimson sea, his expression calm and composed. The ritual of sacrificing a divine essence is inscribed on a broken pillar in the ancient temple, the place I entered while restoring it. Master, I know what you intend to do. I froze in surprise. Robert looked at me, knelt on one knee, tilted his face upward, and smiled gently. Now that the crimson sea has emerged and my body holds the divine essence, I willingly offer myself to fulfill your will. His voice was soft and steady, carried through the howling winds of blood-red storms. Master, I have never betrayed you. Robert placed one hand on his chest, seemingly preparing to activate the divine essence. I saw what he was doing and called out urgently, "Matthew, hurry!" A white robe flashed into view, and Matthew appeared instantly, holding Alexander and Robert facing off with wide eyes. The child gently cupped Robert's face, puckered his lips, and pressed them against his forehead. Alexander carried a shard of the divine essence, sharing the same origin as Robert's. The divine essence within Robert's chest transformed into delicate glowing particles, gently flowing outward and gathering at his forehead before being absorbed by Alexander. With the loss of the divine core, the emperor's radiant aura suddenly dimmed, and he collapsed to the ground, unable to stand. I didn't have time to help him up. Shouting loudly, "Catch the sword!" Matthew reached out, caught him, pulled Alexander close, placed the flame into his small hand, and gently wrapped his large palm around it. "Son, hold on tight." Matthew was the first war god, having quelled upheavals across 6 realms for millennia and fulfilled his great deeds. No sacrifice required. Across all lands and seas, from every corner of the world, power would naturally flow to him. Matthew held Alexander tightly and leapt into the sky above the crimson sea, aiming at the core point as he poured every ounce of his power into a powerful strike from midair. The complete divine essence awakened within Alexander, radiant light of an ancient deity merging with the blade. The flame-infused sword let out a mighty roar as its energy took shape, a blazing phoenix soaring straight toward the core point. With one decisive blow, the blood sea was cleared, and the heavens trembled with power. After a dazzling burst of fire, the remnants of ancient monsters shattered apart. The blazing sword's light faded, broke into dust, and vanished completely from existence. Throughout the course of time, such overwhelming power, whether divine or demonic, should no longer remain in existence. The blood sea settled into calm, quietly sinking beneath the surface. Matthew descended with the child in his arms, his hair now streaked with white. He passed all of his divine power to Alexander, allowing him to summon the flames through a celestial form. Now that he had lost his celestial strength, he was no different from any ordinary person. Alexander was too young to understand what had just happened. He stared blankly at Matthew, then turned toward me. "Daddy, your face looks so pale and scary. After losing my divine essence, I destroyed my physical form and reshaped myself using the remnants of Blood Sea energy. With the Blood Sea destroyed, I've lost my source of power and can't survive much longer." Robert stumbled forward and grabbed my hand tightly. "I'm sorry, Master. I still ended up hurting you." I patted his shoulder. "It's not your fault. Without your help, I would have been destroyed along with the Blood Sea monster 3,000 years ago." Robert looked pale, lost in deep regret. I gently took Alexander into my arms, used a spell to gently erase his memories, and then placed him in Robert's care. "If you're truly burdened by guilt, then please take care of Alexander for me. He carries my divine essence and inherits Matthew's power, but neither Matthew nor I will be able to see him grow up. You'll have to guide him well, on both our behalf. Robert held the sleeping Alexander close, his gaze fixed on the face that mirrored mine perfectly. A single tear fell onto the child's cheek, and he nodded with solemn determination. Yes, master, I will obey your command. Matthew's protective barrier gradually faded away, and the divine beings within could only witness the world-shaking strike. Completely unaware of what had happened outside, Grace was about to shout at me again, but before she could speak, her father cast a silence spell on her. I chuckled. Robert, your daughter really does have quite a fiery temper. Make sure you raise Alexander with more grace. Okay. Robert gave a strained smile. Yes, she's been spoiled. I scanned the heavenly deities one by one. Some familiar faces, others new. Change and renewal are natural. This is how destiny unfolds. An old man with white hair met my gaze and quickly stepped back into the group of divine lords. Looking uneasy, I called out without hesitation, Henry, come here. The old man couldn't hide it. He walked over with a warm smile and bowed respectfully. Master, have you been well lately? I gave him a stern look. Not in good shape at all. My energy has been drained too much. I nearly lost my life for Alexander. Henry wiped his brow nervously. It was urgent, master. Please forgive me. I wasn't really going to hold a grudge. I asked him, what name did you write in the ledger for that ordinary dumpling stand I often go to with Matthew? Henry froze for a moment, then quickly flipped through the ledger and told me. I gave Matthew a nod with my chin, then turned and headed toward the mortal realm. It's not really about craving the taste of dumplings. There was someone there who said something to me once, and I just want to hear it again. All across the 6 realms say Master Matthew is cold-hearted and detached. I have no idea where that rumor even started. When Matthew walked beside me, he was the most intense among all the divine lords. He was like a flame, unafraid to show his anger, nor his love. Divine beings born of primordial essence live far too long, and feel far too much loneliness. From the moment I saw him, I knew my trials of the heart had begun. Matthew walked behind me, his eyes lowered with a quiet smile. William, living a simple life as an ordinary person could be quite nice, don't you think? It was early morning in the human world, warm sunlight gently spilling over both of us. I smiled softly as I looked toward the horizon. Yes, exactly. Wherever you go, I'll follow. End of main story. Bonus chapter Alexander. I am the most honored divine lord in heaven. Raised personally by the Emperor Divine, I inherited the complete divine essence of the last primordial deity and possess all the power of heaven's greatest warrior. Those two really are childish. Before he left, my father tried to erase my memories with magic, but it didn't work. He was used to being the strongest. Maybe he never expected that after inheriting divine essence and power, I ended up far stronger than him. The spell simply couldn't affect me anymore, but he didn't want me to feel upset, so I pretended to be asleep, just to ease his mind. I haven't looked into where they went, and I don't care whether their names still appear in the faded scroll. All I know is that they went to live among humans. As long as I protect the peace of all living beings, they'll always remain with me.